Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans.
Oh yeah! Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans. Oh yeah! Shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans.
Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans.
We are back. I'd like to welcome you to Truth, Lies, Shenanigans, the live streaming podcast. After a short break enjoying the Memorial Day weekend, it's our first show of Pride Month. So feel free to show your pride today in our comments. Woo! My name is Neo Nix, and I'm definitely feeling refreshed after a short vacation. So we really have a really great show planned for you. Back with us, we have Mayor Patrick Wojahn guest hosting the entire show with us today. He wants to talk about the Republicans banning race theory education. Lizzie wants to talk about Naomi Osaka and her choice to exit the French Open. And Rob B found a sad story about the remains of over 200 children at a Canadian school. And I'll be talking about Florida's governor banning transgender girls and women from competing on female sports teams, even making sure to sign it on the first day of Pride Month. And as always, we'll open the show with a quick fire and close with Shenanigans, the game show. But before we get into our show, I need to introduce you to our lovely hosts, our professor, editor, journalist, and sports savant out of Washington, D.C., Miss Lizzie Enders.
Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday Funday. Glad to be back talking to our wonderful viewing audience, but also for today, happy Pride Month, everybody. Happy Pride Month.
Pride.
Whether you are directly a part of the LGBTQ community or if you are an ally, happy Pride Month. And be true to yourself. Like my shirt says, be true to yourself. Love is love. And even though you may not be in love, have the same type of love going on, it's love. And it should all be celebrated. And I think in this day and age where we have so much chaos, hate, and confusion going on, we should be happy when two adults, when two young people even, find love. So happy Pride, y'all. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. All right. And our gamer, tech guru, bona fide rock star with the rock band Fallen Machine coming to you from Sudbury, Ontario, Canada, Rob B. Rock.
Yeah. Thank you. Happy Sunday Funday. It's a beautiful day here today. We're finally getting some summer weather. We were lucky enough to be just out by the lake celebrating a birthday for one of our nieces today. Water's still darn cold, but Joe braved it. She jumped in. I think she got played by her. I think she got played by her nieces on this one. I really think she got played.
How's
Yeah,
that?
I'll do it too. We jumped in. We did this.
Cool. Good job, Jose. All right, and sitting in for the lovely Gianni Storm, back again by popular demand from you and our super fan Jeanette Brown, Mayor Patrick Wojahn. What's going on, Patrick?
And good to be here. Good to be here. I'm glad to be here. Especially excited to spend this opening Pride show with you. I decked out especially for the occasion. I brought my rainbow feather boa. So
nice.
I love it.
And I gotta say, so this is our first really hot day or first really hot weekend here in the DC Metro. And it is hot wearing this thing, so I'm not trying to wear it for the whole show.
you definitely have to.
A couple of years ago, though, I wore this for there was a Pride 5K, and I wore this for that event, and I was just like dripping and covered in these little but it's festive, so and I wanted to be festive and happy Pride, everyone, and it's good to see you all.
For those that don't know, Patrick joined us a while back as a spotlight guest, then as a guest host during the elections, and this time he's here for the entire show. So thank you so much for coming back. Now, real quick, reintroduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them a little bit about you and what you do and things like that.
Sure. So I'm the mayor of the city of College Park. College Park is right outside of Washington, D.C. I've been mayor for just over 5 years, and I also work as Director of Government Relations at Rails and Trails Conservancy. So I work on advocating for walking and biking infrastructure for trails. I'm a big outdoor enthusiast myself and a runner and bicyclist. And it's good to be here.
Thank you. So glad to have you. All right. And also a quick reminder, be sure to check out TLS Unscripted this Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Last episode, they were asking the question, which is worse? Cheating on someone or having an affair with someone in a relationship. So check out Unscripted Wednesdays. You can download the last episode at TLSpod.com or view at TLSshow.com. Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. All right.
The tongue twisters that the girls did at the end of the show were hilarious.
The tongue twisters.
Oh my God. The tongue twisters were just brilliant. That made my night when I was watching it.
It was fun.
But what, I'm not going to let the panel off that easily. We aren't necessarily a part of Unscripted. That's for our ladies, Gianni Storm and Olivia E. But I want to pose the question to the panel. What's worse, cheating on someone or being the other person in the relationship?
I say cheating on someone's definitely worse because there's a bond of trust there. Whereas you don't have, if you're the person having an affair with someone, you don't necessarily have that same bond of trust with someone. So you're not breaking that bond. So I think
the other party is breaking that bond.
Yeah, I would say I agree. I think the third party is, unless the third party is like like seducing somebody to try to get them to cheat on their spouse or significant other. Yeah, right. Well, that would be bad too. Yeah. But if they're just along for the ride, then I'd say the person doing the cheating is the more culpable one.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with the gents today, but here's my advice to the third parties in these relationships. If you are brave enough, if you are big and bad enough to be the third party, to be the outside party in someone's relationship, just make sure you can handle the heat. Make sure you can handle it when either the spouse or the boyfriend, girlfriend on the other side steps to you, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And if you can't handle it, if you can't defend yourself, then I wouldn't do it. That's a whole lot of mess to be involved with. That's a whole lot.
I see Olivia's online. She said, unless the third party is a family member. That's a lot of trust.
That sounds like backwoods Alabama shit, man. No.
It's literally not a blood relative of the cheating party. That'd be bad.
If it's a family member, they really need to heed my advice, because that's going to be some fisticuffs.
Oh, you fighting?
Mm-hmm.
So you saying Jacqueline Robinson took your man? You'd have a problem with that?
gonna make things really awkward at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. I am very, I wouldn't say territorial, but I'm very loyal. Like, I'm barely friends with my friends' spouses. And if I am, I'm not around them if my initial friend, if my girl, or my guy, because I have male friends as well, if they are not a part of us. Like, I'm not just going out with somebody's husband that's a friend of mine, just going out with their husband just to hang out. Now, we're not talking about whether or not I have been the third party. That's a whole other conversation. However, as it relates to family members or friends, I would never cross that line. I'm very particular about that. I would never cross that line.
I agree with you. I agree with you. All right. So, okay, that almost sounds like our quick fire question, but we actually have a quick fire question, so let's get to it. All right, so Tiffany Haddish has been tapped to produce and star in a biopic about the legendary fastest woman, FloJo, Florence Griffith Joyner, who still holds the record to this day. So, guys, what are your thoughts on Haddish as FloJo? Mayor Patrick.
Oh, you had to start with me, didn't you?
Yep.
So you know, I'm the type of guy. I know we're supposed to do this quick. I'm the type of guy that if I were on Jeopardy, the last pick category that I would pick would be the pop culture category. So I gotta admit, until now, I've never really heard of Tiffany Haddish. I'm sure if I looked her up on Wikipedia, I think she's got some great credentials. I'm sure she's a great actress. But
all right, Robin.
No clue. No comments on this.
She's a producer for the movie, so I mean, you go, girl. If I'm producing an album, guess who's going to be fronting vocals?
Yeah, hey, Lizzie Enders.
FloJo, I say to Tiffany Haddish, Flo, no.
I personally think it's a perfect pick, but Haddish better call up some Sean T or somebody for Sanity or some T90X. I mean, just saying, you're going to have to work out a little bit because FloJo was tight.
A little bit?
Damn, yeah.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Work out a little bit?
Okay, a lot of bit. That's why I said Insanity.
There's so much, in my opinion. And again, I'm not necessarily a fan of Tiffany Haddish, but that's neither here nor there.
We know that.
It's about applying or putting in the person who is best likely to represent the headliner, the subject of the piece. And at the time when FloJo won 3 gold medals in the Seoul Olympics in 1988, she was 28 years old. Tiffany Haddish right now is 41. She was probably, FloJo, the most fit woman on the planet.
She was pretty fit.
Tiffany Haddish is nowhere near that. And I'm not just talking about her physique. I'm also talking about track form. Like, are they just going to, substitute like images of FloJo for when she's actually competing, when she's actually running, when she's actually breaking, Olympic records, world records, or what have you? There were other people that could have played this part. So, Neil, do you have the clips or the picture?
The picture, yep. This is who you.
So this is Queen Harrison Clay. She is a former Olympian. She took part in the 2008 Olympics for the United States. She is a hurdler and a sprinter. Now, you tell me she doesn't resemble FloJo.
She does.
Yeah, but can she act?
That's what I'm going to say. That's my point.
The first credential is, can you act?
But can Tiffany run? Can Tiffany run?
But she don't have to run. She doesn't have to run.
But does she?
She just has to act like she can run.
You're right.
Won't she have the?
I can act like I can run.
Yeah, Patrick, that's not going to get you the part.
Yeah. But who knows how it's going to be shot?
Patrick could do FloJo.
We're still going to try it out, but I'm sorry.
Who knows how the story is going to be built, how it's going to be playing out?
Even though FloJo really didn't run the hurdles, does that not look like her?
Well, she could use a body double. She could fit in. Harrison could fit in for a body double.
Why use a body double when you could just use someone who is more apt, more appropriate to play the part?
We don't know that she can play that part.
Because body doubles are paid to look a certain way. Actors are paid to play a part.
Okay, but I was going to get to that. So we're saying that Tiffany Haddish is a great actress?
I wasn't
I'm
saying
not saying that Tiffany Haddish
that's not
is
what I
a
was
great
saying.
actress. She's got her style.
Black athlete could act the part of FloJo way better than Tiffany Haddish.
She's well typed.
Her Wiki, I will say her Wikipedia entry, which is the only thing I know her by, does say that she that she got a Primetime Emmy Award for her performance on Saturday Night Live. So.
Those are credentials. Those are credentials right there.
And she's only the second woman, black woman, to get a Grammy for a comedy album. The first being Whoopi Goldberg. So you know,
it's on the wiki.
Fred Hargrove. So don't hate on Tiffany.
This isn't going to be a comedy. At least I hope it's not going to be a comedy.
Yeah. No, but Tiffany's been training for a year already. She has shed 50 pounds. She has changed the way that she eats. If she's working with the studio trainers and the team of nutritionalists, they're not shooting until November. She still has many months to get into the shape that she needs to be in.
FloJo trained at least for 20 years. At least.
Well, she's not going to look exactly like FloJo. I mean,
you're asking too much for her to look exactly like to that equivalent. We're not going to get The Rock to play FloJo. He's been training for years.
Because Tiffany is the producer, and she elected herself to play this part. It suggests that they didn't even consider any other actresses.
Well, I'm just saying, okay. I'm just glad that they're getting the story out because I love FloJo, and we really haven't. I don't even think there's a biopic on FloJo. Not even like a Lifetime biopic or something.
But I agree with that. I remember cheering FloJo on when I was a kid in the Olympics. You know, watching the Olympics and cheering her on. Yeah.
I'm very passionate about this one because, like Neo said, you know, we are FloJo fans.
I'm a fan.
FloJo indirectly, in her death, saved my life. And so I want this story to be told the best way that it can be told. And you know what? I'm not rooting against Tiffany, but I'm saying I think there could have been better options out there all around.
I think I think one reason Haddish is a good choice is because, you know, this generation has a connection to her and they're more likely to watch and be interested in FloJo's story in general. Just because
put her in as FloJo's PR person or something like that.
I don't know. I don't think it's a bad pick. I don't think it's a bad pick.
Like, you know, if they had gotten someone to play Billie Holiday,
yeah. Well, yeah.
Andre Day played that part.
But they've done that plenty of times, and it's worked in some cases. They just, you know, it's happened.
It's different when you have sport.
All right. So we gotta move on. That was our quick fire. So.
No.
So no Tiffany Haddish from Lizzie. Everybody else is okay with it. All right. All right, so let's get on the main topics. If you've never been to TLS before, let me tell you a bit about us. Each week our hosts bring us topics in the news they want to discuss. That host will tell everybody what's going on. Then our lovely panel will chat about it for a bit, sharing their unique points of view on the issue until we see our friend Genji celebrating Pride Month, and that's when we know time is up, and it's time to hear from you. We'll take your online comments and questions. At the very end, we'll simply ask our panel to see if they think this was truth, lies, or shenanigans. For our podcast listeners on Apple Podcasts, don't forget you can join in the conversation live every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We stream on all major platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Find us at TLS Live Show or TLSShow.com. So let's get right into it. Let's start out with Lizzie today. This was one of the hottest topics of the week. Naomi Osaka quit the tournament. Tell us what happened, Lizzie.
So last week on May 26th, Naomi Osaka, who is the current #2 women's tennis player in the world, she won her first match at the French Open, which is played on a clay surface. But before the tournament even began, on May 26th, she announced on her social media channels that she would not be doing press conferences at the French Open. Now, for those of you who don't know, for most athletes, professional athletes in at least America, I'm not sure necessarily what the rules are internationally, except for tennis, but in America and for tennis, it is required at these tournaments that you make yourself available to the press after your match, whether you win or lose. This is something that you sign in your contract. This is something that every athlete is aware of. And it is noted in your contract that if you do not show up for the press conference, that you will be fined. So Naomi decided that she did not want to participate in the press conference portion of the French Open if she won or lost her matches. And again, she won her first match. And that she would be willing to accept the fines, saying that she was citing mental anguish, mental distress, depression from her interactions with the media and the types of questions that they have been asking her since the 2018 US Open. So my question to, actually, I think it was 2016. My numbers are a little off. So my question to the panel is, first and foremost, because like Neo said, this has been a hot topic over the past week and a half. I've had to talk about it a lot. I've had to explain a lot about it to friends, family, people online, because I am a sports journalist. I was the tennis editor at Sports Illustrated, so I know firsthand both sides of the argument with this. But I'm curious, just for the panel, just in hearing that she dropped out of the tournament because she didn't want to do the press conference. Well, first she announced that she was not going to do the press conferences. Then the French Open, along with the 3 other Grand Slams, the Australian Open, Wimbledon, which is in 2 weeks, and the US Open, sided with the French Open and said not only would she be subject to fines, but she could face a default for any match if she decided that she would not participate in the press conferences. So my question to the panel is, as a result of Naomi withdrawing once she got from the tournament, from the French Open, once she got that announcement from the French Open, what are your impressions? What do you think about this controversy?
Let's start with Robbie.
I applaud her for stepping away from the tournament and prioritizing her mental health. I believe that her trainers moving forward need to help develop her game on the court. And they also need to recognize that she has these social anxieties and these pressures that are part of her reality. Like you said, Liz, like they are contractually obligated, and that's in several sports, like in most of the sports that I can think of. If you're not doing the press conference after the fact, you're getting dinged. If you're going to sit there and be stone-faced and quiet, you're getting dinged. If you're not able to fulfill all of your work duties, then you're unfit for work. So again, I applaud her for walking away. The interviews are part of the interview. It helps with the endorsements, public relations, all of the media presentation. And if she can't fulfill the conditions of competition at that level, then she needs to maybe consider stepping back and playing at a level where they don't have those requirements of her. But I'm glad that she's addressing it and she's making it public. I also agree with the venues and the media outlets for standing firm as far as what they have to offer as a product. Unfortunately, entertainers, sports figures end up being commodities more than people. And that's something that you have to know when you enter that world.
Interesting thought.
That's why you get paid. That's why you get paid.
That's why you get paid. Yeah.
Naomi Osaka is the highest paid female athlete in the world at this point. Last year in 2020, even during the pandemic, she made over $55 million she won the US Open back in September. She won the Australian Open this year. And so money, not just from those 2 tournaments, but also from endorsements. So there's a lot that goes on in her requirements. Patrick, what do you have to say?
I'm going to take a little bit of a different take on this because the first question that comes to my mind is is she paid because she's a good tennis player and one of the top tennis players in the world, or is she paid because she's going on TV and doing press conferences? And shouldn't somebody be able to, if they're a really top tier tennis player, but she has, it seems to be disability, mental health issue that prevents her from social anxiety, the mental health issue that prevents her from going on TV and doing these interviews and dealing with the stress of that. So what is that? I understand, they have to make money, of course, but why should she have to? I mean, she's making money because people watch Wimbledon and people watch her play. What does going on TV and answering questions from reporters have to do with being a top tennis player?
And so, again, as a member of the media, my answer to that is, first and foremost, most of the press conferences that are done for all of these sports aren't broadcast on television. The purpose of the press conference, you get snippets for, highlights for ESPN, for local news, to hype the tournament, promote the tournament or whatever. But the main purpose of the press conference is so that a media person, a journalist like myself, can do our work. So we can ask these athletes questions, so we can write stories. And in addition to hyping up the tournament or the event.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get what your point is on one side, but on the flip side, the average press conference for all of these sports is not broadcast. It's so people can get there and do their work.
But to Patrick's point, if someone wants to compete, why can't they just compete? I think that's what he's asking. Why can't they just compete?
Okay, if you want to compete, though, then don't compete in my tournament. Because these are the rules of my tournament, and they have been explained to you before you step foot on my tournament soil.
I guess why are those the rules, though? I mean, why does somebody have to answer questions
because
of the press
without the media outlets
in a press conference
to
format?
Share the without the media outlets to share the content, to share these stories with us, then we're not tuning in to watch it. We don't know what's going on. We always crave those stories. We want to have our heroes to be humanized. We crave it, and it's a brand thing. As a musician, I can't record something and then say, well, I don't want to hear any of the criticism. I don't want to hear any of the criticism. I can't hide from that because it's part and parcel of it. If you are going to be competing at that level of competition, if you miss a half step, if you wear the wrong thing, people are going to be all over you, and you have to accept that as part of competing at that level.
And she'll get that criticism regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, she'll get that criticism regardless, and that's. I don't think this is a matter of her not wanting to be exposed to criticism. I think from what I read, she doesn't like being in that sort of quick fire atmosphere where people are throwing questions at her, and that I can kind of understand. There's got to maybe there's. I wonder if is there a different way to do it? Can they give her questions in writing and have her respond to those questions in writing? I mean, is it they have to?
I mean, it's worth considering the situation. I mean, that she's in. I don't necessarily agree with Patrick, but I hear what he's saying. It's worth considering alternatives, given the situation that she is, especially if you are dealing with someone who has a mental disorder, or not a mental disorder, but some type of disorder such as depression or something like that. Maybe you do take that into account and find a way to resolve that situation, because it is becoming relatively common, which again leads further into my point, but I'll get to my point once we kind of talk this through.
And so I'll give you that, because truth be told, so when I worked for Sports Illustrated, not only did I cover, tennis, but my first two beats were college football and the NBA. And I covered the NBA more fervently than I covered college football. So I was at games at least 2 or 3 times a week in the locker room. I can guarantee you the reporters don't want to be there either. This isn't a setup that is put together necessarily by the media. It's the leagues also that put these things together. And so even though, yes, I was a young female reporter, young woman, I think I was 23 when I first started doing locker room duty. Of course, it was very intimidating to me. I did not want to be there. I had some incidents, between myself and other male journalists, but also between myself and other athletes that I had to report to the league because they were inappropriate. I had a jock strap thrown at me. I had, things said to me that I will not repeat here. But We didn't want to be there either, but that was what we were given. And so I couldn't go back to Sports Illustrated and say, I'm not going to do locker room duty. I don't want this, because I knew that going in, and I knew that that was the expectation for me. But my question is, because I understand what you're saying, Patrick, and I do think that there needs to be maybe a conversation about how we can change this, about how we can make the rules for media and press conferences more athlete friendly. However, when did Naomi or her people, because I'm going to put this more on her people than I am on her.
Okay.
But when did her people give the French Open the opportunity to respond to this? Again, she never wrote them a letter. They never called the officials at the French Open. She released this statement on social media. Last time I checked, when you were in a business contract with a company, when you were making, potentially making millions of dollars with a company for a contract that you have a conversation. You don't announce it on social media before you actually talk to the people, the business people that are involved in this contract. And like Rob said, she has PR people, she has a medical team, a medical staff. How is it that she showed up in Paris? And not even just in Paris, because she played, if I'm not mistaken, she played in the Parma tournament in Italy the week before the French Open started, lost in the first round. And she played in the Italian Open in Rome the week before that, lost in the first round. So her confidence, no lie, her confidence was definitely down. But if you're a part of her team and you know this, and you know she's having these issues, why do you have her there?
That's part of the point I'm trying. I was going to make.
Yeah.
I just want to make. I want to read there before I get to what I was going to say. So Daria Winter, I think, is agreeing with Patrick or in Patrick's corner. So she says, "Why is she paid? Why do we expect athletes not to be affected by the pandemic? She has done press conferences prior to the pandemic. Why is this unrelated? The questions are not. Hold on. The question not related to the media questions by and large? Question mark. Why are these challenges not taken seriously about behavior post-pandemic that allow for modifications? Sometimes the medical condition produces unexpected behaviors."
But how is the tournament supposed to know about her needs medically if she doesn't make them aware of that? Like, she never said anything about it beforehand.
She did. She did. I thought she said something. Sorry, I thought she said something at the beginning of this that she the reason why she couldn't participate in the press conferences was that she said she had some sort of social anxiety. I mean, it wasn't just, she communicated that to the French Open folks, didn't she?
She communicated that in her statement, her social media statement. There was never a conversation between her people and the French Open. They even acknowledged after the fact that when they first found out about it, that she was pulling out. Not necessarily that she didn't like to do press conferences, because I don't think many athletes like to do press conferences. But when they found out that she had said that she was going to pull out of the press conferences, that they reached out to her. They reached out to her PR team. And again, I'm putting this on her PR people, her agent, her manager, whatever. They reached out to them and was met with radio silence. And so then that's when they released the statement saying, okay, not only are you going to be fined, but you could potentially be defaulted for, if you show up to the next match and you happen to win, we're going to default you. Yeah. So she never gave the opportunity to sit down and work with her and figure out what's going on. And let me just say, before you get back into it, Neo, let me just say, she's not the only player on the tour that has talked about their mental health issues. The current number one player in women's tennis, Ash Barty, she took 18 months off of the tour to deal with her depression and anxiety. The number two player, David Medvedev, he travels with the sports psychologist. He talked about in the past week, because up until this week, he's been shitty on clay. He's been winning. He just won today, so he's doing fairly well. But up until this week, he had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. He travels with his sports psychologist. There's several tennis athletes, because it's an individual sport. All you have is you and your coach and your trainer. So a lot of these players travel with sports psychologists. So again, my question is to Naomi's people: why didn't you take care of her before it got to this fever pitch?
But I agree with what I agree with. I'm kind of I gotta admit I'm kind of in Lizzie and Robbie's corner on this one, and they have different points of view too. But I'm I'm wondering like um, part of my concern is that I feel like we're over labeling um, mental anxiety and disorders because I feel like as someone who has been depressed at times, been sad, been um, dealt with confidence issues. Um, so a lot of it's normal. I feel like it's normal. This is normal. It's normal to be anxious. I'm anxious all the time. I'm anxious half the time when we start this show. I mean, these are normal human emotions, and we all deal with it. And I feel like sometimes, I feel like and I'm wondering how you guys feel. I feel like we're over labeling. I think you know, and another thing, when we look at elite players, one of the things I've always admired about elite players is, where I lack confidence sometimes and I don't do well at sports or some things because sometimes I'm just having a bad day or I'm feeling down. The elite players, I kind of admire the fact that they're able to overcome those lack of confidence issues or those
Mhm.
they go out there and every game they're shooting shots or hitting the balls like crazy and they're like and that was what makes them elite because they're able to overcome what's normal to us, the anxiousness, the lack of confidence, the depression. I was depressed on
But
my
Neil,
birthday. I mean,
I
but
mean,
that was
I
that
think
day.
there's well, I think there's differences between your garden level
Sure,
anxiety
sure,
that
of
we all
course.
feel, and there's social anxiety that rises to a level that can be very crippling, and there's depression that can rise to a level that can be very crippling. We
Absolutely.
don't know with
And
Naomi
I want to
Osaka
before
what.
I just want to reiterate. I just want to say I definitely understand that there are spectrums. So there are different people. People are
Yeah.
depressed, clinically depressed, and things like that. I'm not discounting that, but I think some of what we're dealing with here is normal. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Just
Oh, and
because when they're talking about her social anxieties
let me
and
let
stuff
Patrick say
in
what
the
he was going to say. I'm sorry, I
articles,
cut him off. Let me just let him get in. Sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
I mean, I just don't think we know that. I think she said she can't do it because of social anxiety. I think to some extent we have to give, unless we know her medical, you know, diagnosis or medical history, we have to give her a little bit the benefit of the doubt to say that it does prevent her from being in this atmosphere.
Yeah. Go ahead,
and
Robbie.
that's
I
it.
don't know,
Because
knocking
what it
that.
was saying in the articles is that the big thing that she was having issues with is the sports journalists were questioning her ability to play on a clay surface because she's had weaker results there, and as a result of being questioned on it, it instilled doubt in her. Well, that's part of the game. If it's a team sport, your own teammates are going to chirp on you. But because this is an individual sport, you don't have those supports. So if you're making $50 million a year, travel with a psychologist who's going to help you perform at that level and stay healthy. Because I mean, look at
Or
individual
not do
sports.
it if you're not
Look at
healthy.
Tiger's
Not
not
do
a
it.
mentally healthy person. He would really benefit from having a sports psychologist. He would have benefited from that rather than have his dad.
And listen, I'm not saying I don't believe any of what Naomi is feeling or what she has gone
Yeah.
through, anything about her anxiety or her depression.
Because
What
she's
I'm
mentioned it.
saying,
This isn't the first time she's mentioned it. She's talked about it.
what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that her team
Yes, and
bears
I
some
agree with the team.
responsibility for this. They failed her. And I think Fred Hargrove asked, why do we think that she made the announcement on social media versus, meeting with the French Open? I think that's what young people do these days. They flex on social media versus sitting down and having a conversation. And that when you're dealing with a business, because remember, sports is a business. It's an entertainment business. When you're dealing with the business and you're dealing with millions, billions of dollars, you can't just make your claims, talk to your social media audience and think that that's okay. Like you have to, just like you sat down and had that, worked out the parameters of your contract and how much you're going to get paid. You have to do that when something is wrong. And if she needs help, and I do think that she does, at least some assistance, at least some guidance into how to deal with this, because tennis is a very lonely sport. It's a very lonely sport, but
Yeah.
no one can help you if you don't make that known to people. Like you have to let us help us help you. And so that's why, and again, a little bit, I'm a journalist, and so kind of take offense a little bit, but more importantly, I don't want Naomi to come out of this feeling like the villain here.
Yeah.
I think she has adults around her who could have handled this better for her, and they didn't. Now she's got
she's an adult, though. We don't want to act like she's not an adult.
But she's not
like she's
an
a
adult.
child
She's
or something.
but she's an adult who's used to just dealing with playing tennis. That's why she hires an agent. That's why she has a manager. That's why she has a training staff.
So I'm looking at the comments on. Okay.
I was just gonna say, I want her to pay attention to the fact that this wasn't just the French Open. Like the all 4 Grand Slams locked down and was like, we're not having that. Like, you at least have to have a conversation with us.
Yeah.
You at least have to talk to us and let us know what's going on.
So it does sound like most of our audience is in agreement with Patrick. So Olivia points out depression and sadness is different. It is. I'm not saying it's not. So I'm not trying to differentiate that. I'm just saying I think a lot of what we're dealing with is a lot of what we see is a little more normal than we are treating it right now. But anyway.
Exactly. And so Daria just asked if we know what clinical depression is. Well, I definitely know.
Yeah, clinical depression is clinical. Yeah, that's a definite disorder.
But the point is, no one is going to know if you are clinically depressed if you don't advocate for yourself or your team. Like, you have a team. Like, I would fire, if I were Naomi Osaka right now, I would fire my entire team, my PR team, my medical team, because they did not treat her and handle this in a way that was to her advantage. And so now we don't know. She played, so the French Open ends this Sunday. Right after the French Open, the grass court season starts. So grass court tournaments start. She pulled out of the subsequent grass court tournament before Wimbledon that is in Germany. So she's not going to play in that tournament. I mean, the British press is brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Way worse than the French press. And so it begs the question, are they going to have her mentally ready to get to Wimbledon?
Okay.
Because that's their job.
We're going to have to move on from this one. Let me just get a couple more comments in. Fred Hargrove says, agree with Lizzie about the team. Curious about if her team advised on the post. Ephraim says, I agree. She let people know how she feels, just don't say, or so they can read her mind. And Dario, okay, so Jacqueline Robinson points out there's a difference between normal situational anxiety and depression and clinically diagnosed anxiety disorders. Yes, absolutely agree and know that. But again, I do still feel like we are normalizing some. We are labeling some of these things as clinically depressed or depression when it is just simply normal that we. I just feel like confidence and things like that. That's
even
normal.
if it's just confidence or something that involves anxiety.
That's normal
and it's not clinical depression, but that's to you, Neo. You're not out in front of on center court playing tennis.
True.
And so if a young tennis player, a young athlete, a young football player, if they need someone to get them just through that, it's not clinical depression, but just that anxiety, hire someone to help them. That's your job.
And they do have funds to do that, and the means
hire
to do
someone.
it. Well, I didn't, but I'd probably be a star basketball player if I could have figured out my confidence issues. So
I will say I do think that there needs to be a back and forth here, and they should come up with a solution. That's how, and I represented people with disabilities, particularly people with mental illness, for many years in the DC mental health system, and that's how when you need an accommodation for something like anxiety, you make a request for it, you sit down and you work something out, and that's probably what should be happening here. That's probably not.
And I think there should be some consideration for it. I mean, I'm going back to what Patrick said. I do think there should be some consideration for mental health of athletes with these tournaments and big business. But we got to move on. So let's go ahead and move on. All right.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, guys. So, Rob B., you found a horrific story about the remains of kids found at a school up in Canada. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so on May 28th, news agencies began reporting on the remains of 215 children, some as young as 3 years old, having been found buried on the site of what was Canada's largest Indigenous residential school, the Kamloops Residential School in BC, in British Columbia, which ran from 1893 to 1978. And residential schools it was a horrible situation. They suspect that more bodies may be found because there are some areas that still remain to be searched, and they are using ground penetrating radar to assist the search. So, for those of you who don't know, residential schools were government sponsored religious schools that were established to assimilate Indigenous children into Euro Canadian culture. So, residential schools were created by Christian churches and the Canadian government as an attempt to both educate and convert Indigenous youth and to assimilate them into Canadian society.
So they were trying to convert natives to Canadians or English.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. However, the schools really ended up disrupting the lives and communities, causing long-term problems among Indigenous peoples. The schools ran from circa 1833 to 1997. The last one closed in 97. The Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement has recognized that 139 of these residential schools existed across Canada. At its peak in 1931, there were about 80 schools operating in the country. So the announcement has understandably sparked outrage across our nation. Flags have been flying at half-mast. People have been laying hundreds of tiny shoes and toys in public squares, places of government, on the steps of churches to reference the role that Christian churches played in this extermination, this horrible, despicable act. During an interview with Global News, Shirley Williams, a survivor, said, she was quoted as saying, "They hid the bodies. Even though they were nuns and priests and things like that, they did things that were not proper." And there are hundreds of accounts of survivors from these residential schools. Torture, cruelty, severe and unusual punishment, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, murder. And a lot of the times when these things were reported, law agencies became complicit with the reports. There was nothing to report. Okay, it was just another missing kid. No charges are going to be pressed. So now there's a small coalition of more than a dozen lawyers across Canada that have formally requested that the International Criminal Court investigate the Canadian government and the Vatican for crimes against humanity following preliminary reports about the remains of the children. And if this happens, the investigation could lead to the prosecution of employees, agents, and actors of the Catholic Church, the Government of Canada, who were either involved in the creation and cover-up of the burial grounds, and that's it. The survivors are coming forward. The Vancouver Archbishop issued a formal apology to the First Nations people after the preliminary findings after the bodies were initially found. Pope Francis has met with both Vatican-based Canadian cardinals on Saturday to discuss this, but we really haven't heard from the Pope on it. Many Canadians have called on the Pope for a formal apology for the Catholic Church's role in the residential schools. And I guess Pope Francis was elected in 2013. He's already apologized for the Church's role in colonialism in the Americas, but he hasn't addressed the residential schools, and he usually does these apologies during papal visits, and no papal visits are on the calendar as it stands in Canada at this time. So June is Pride Month, but it also in Canada, the month of June is National Indigenous History Month. So it's important to be discussing this also today. So I want your reactions, your opinions, recommendations for the federal government, religious leaders on reparations, because this story made me feel gross as a Canadian. Typically, I say I'm Canadian, and there's a good feeling with that because we've had a relatively good reputation internationally, and this is a huge blemish. It's heinous. It's reprehensible. It's completely ethically bankrupt. So I'm just I'm personally at a loss and just dealing with this. So I'm looking to you for your reactions, your opinions, and recommendations you would have for people that are dealing with it, or for the governments and the church.
Let's start with Liz.
I think this is a perfect example of, again, why I don't really care about apologies too much. I think as it relates to evil acts, criminal acts in our society, the justice system, governments, they think that, okay, if I offer an apology, if I give out thoughts and prayers, that'll make everything okay, without changing policies, without being more strict when it comes to punishment and holding people accountable for these things. I mean, again, we're talking about, Catholic Church, we're talking about religion, we're talking about, a group of people that in this particular case, not only because I'm sure that there not only was the murder of these children involved, but also some type of sexual abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
no one being held accountable for that. Like, if this were my child, or if I'm that child who is in that, situation, what the fuck is an apology going to do for me? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so this is why I think, we need to start holding not just the accusers, the suspects, the criminals accountable, but we also need to start holding law enforcement and governments accountable to get them to see that these acts are serious and there needs to be serious consequences, especially for, vile and violent acts that are perpetrated against children across the board, whether it's in the United States or Canada, throughout the world. Children have no rights. They have no rights whatsoever. And so in situations like this, it's just like, okay, we're sorry. We found 200 and X number of bodies. Let's just sweep it under the rug. That was awful. All right, let's move on. And I agree with Rod. There needs to be, accountability. There needs to be, more laws and punishment enacted, but there also needs to be some type of compensation, because in this day and age, the only way to get people to pay attention is you either put them in jail or you get them in their pockets. So now it's time we need to start going into people's pockets,
So you're talking
making folks
reparations.
yes, exactly.
Mayor Patrick.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I agree with Lizzie on this one. What struck me about reading this article is that the parallels between what I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, the whole situation with the history of race relations in the United States, and really just the seeming inability or unwillingness to reckon with the past in a way that acknowledges the horrible things that have been done to certain groups of people, and to come to a way to deal with that acknowledges that not just acknowledges it, but goes beyond it and redresses it and comes up with a way to resolve it, and to pursue restorative justice, and pursue remedies that can make right what happened in the future to the greatest extent, or in the past to the greatest extent possible. And it may there are some things that are so horrible that you can never fully redress, but something needs to be done to look at these families, these people who lost their children, and whose children are never coming home again. Where are these families now? There are probably still people dealing with this loss that has been unacknowledged and unaddressed by the Canadian government, just like in the United States with what's happened in our history to Indigenous peoples, to the African American community, to racial minorities throughout our history, that we just haven't been able to come to terms with in any sort of appropriate way or adequate way.
Yeah.
I agree, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know how I feel about kids. So when I saw the story, it definitely saddened me. I mean, 215 bodies of children.
And they anticipate finding more, and this is at just one site. They are going to be At this point, they're going to be revisiting all of the residential school sites to see if they have similar findings, because there are numerous accounts of one of the more heartbreaking stories I read was from a man who's now in his 70s, recounting when he was a child, going out with a friend and from the school and a nun down to the hillside to dig holes to bury two of their classmates. No ceremony. There was nobody crying. There was nobody speaking. And they just dug these graves, buried the bodies, and went back to the school. And he wishes that he remembers where these bodies were. But this is the 215 that's just the first number.
No,
I mean,
I agree with you. I think that, that's just a small number. That doesn't even, begin to open up all of the atrocities that were done here.
Yeah, when I hear stories like that, and I put myself in those situations, and I can imagine just like what that must have been like, and it just seems so horrible to be a child caught up in that situation, to even see those atrocities, to see things like that happening. And I mean,
after having been removed from your home so that you could be taught how to behave in society.
Yeah, it just
the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable.
People who can't speak for themselves, can't do anything about it. And that's the reason it bothers me with kids, because it's like you can't do anything. I remember when I was a child going through tough situations, I felt powerless. I was like, I can't fix this. I can't, and even today I try to be a fixer. I try to problem solve and fix things. And back then I know I was similar, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't get out of the situation. I couldn't remove myself from the situation. I couldn't remove my brother and sister from the situation. I couldn't do anything. And I can't imagine with these particular kids, because I've always felt that even though my situation was tough, there's people in worse situations than I went through, and have dealt with way worse than I have. And I can't even imagine what that's like. And I mean,
But you know what else is also a part of this panel is that Hollywood has made a lot of money off of stories like this. Because like Rob said, this isn't the first story, won't be the last. It's not just happening in Canada. It's definitely happened, 1,000 times over in the United States. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Sleepers from the late 90s, early 2000s.
I know it, but I haven't seen it.
But it was about this particular topic. Brad Pitt was in it. I can't remember.
Oh, no, I did watch it. I know what you're talking about. I think De Niro was in it.
Yeah. So it was
I did watch it.
Young boys being abused
in the Catholic Church.
In the Catholic Church, when they were, sent to their priests for direction, for instruction, for mentorship. And so Hollywood has also made a lot of money off of stories like this. We know it's happening, but no one's doing anything
about it. All right, we're running out of time, so let's get to the comments real quick. So Jose says, absolutely shameful. Notice these atrocities, this is Jacqueline Robinson, notice these atrocities typically happen to populations that aren't in a position to advocate for themselves and are powerless. Let's see, what is it? Olivia says, what atonement, but that's what atonement is, acknowledging and changing. Let's see, Olivia said, we love you, Neo, P.S. your brother and sister. Sleepers, incredible movie, says Jose. This may be an unpopular, because this is Olivia, maybe an unpopular comment, makes me think about all those aborted babies that have no rights either to protect children. So, all right, we're going to, unfortunately not, does anybody want to comment on anything, any of those?
So I just want to make one last comment. I really appreciated everything that you had to share, and to segue into Patrick's segment, I really wish that residential schools had been a part of my curriculum, because this is something we've only been talking about as a nation for the last decade or so. And if I would have known about the struggles of Indigenous people in my youth as part of my formal education, it would have changed me as a person early in life. I would not have bought into what I was hearing from society, from my peers. I would have actually connected with the culture, because all I was taught about indigenous peoples was that the Europeans came and they were savages that they traded fur and foods with, and that they taught us how to survive off the land. And that was pretty much the extent of what we learned about the indigenous tribes that were here prior to European settlement. Shameful. We need to hear what actually happened. Real history makes you squeamish because real history is ugly because humans can be really ugly.
Well, Rob, it's similar here. I mean, if you look at, former Senator Rick Santorum and why he was let go from CNN, it was because of his comments that he made about Native American people and how they had not contributed to, American society, to the United States of America, and how Europeans came here and that the country was a blank slate, and the Europeans were responsible for current day America. I mean, that's kind of what we're taught here. There's no, or like you said, segueing into both Neo and Patrick's topics about how our true history is not really being taught. And so then because of that, you have people who are looked down on and who are vulnerable and who are not seen as actual humans.
Yep. Time's really tight. We got to move on, guys. Got to move on. Sorry about that. All right.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, Mayor Patrick, you're up. Repubs are moving forward with banning race theory in schools. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that's happening not just in Oklahoma, but in different states around the country. But Oklahoma is the latest one to make news. Is that states are Board of Education and state legislators are banning the teaching of quote unquote critical race theory in schools, and a lot of people, since a lot of people don't know what exactly critical race theory means, they have to put it out there in a way that schools can interpret. And the language in Oklahoma, and I'm looking at this in the article because I want to make sure I get it right. It says they're banning lessons that include the concept that, quote, one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex, that a person's, quote, moral character is inherently determined by his or her race or sex, or that someone should feel discomfort, guilt, or distress on account of their race or sex. And the timing of this is very interesting and problematic because in Oklahoma, of course, in May 31st, 1921, was the start of the Tulsa Massacre, where hundreds of Black people in what was considered then the Black Broadway, a very thriving. Sorry, you're right. Sorry, Black Wall Street.
That's what we're here for.
Black Wall Street. Was thriving at the time, and really a really thriving culture. And my understanding about that was that it wasn't just it was a thriving Black culture in Tulsa, in part because Black people had been pushed to Tulsa because they weren't welcome in other places, and then they had this thriving culture in Tulsa that was decimated by this massacre, where hundreds of people were killed. Thousands made homeless or displaced, and really just completely destroyed the community. And to be, I mean, at minimum, this is completely tone deaf on the part of Governor Stitt from Oklahoma and the Oklahoma State Legislature. At worst, it seems almost an intentional way to just spit in the face. I mean, how can you read a story like that as a white person in America and not feel guilt or shame about the fact about what has been done by other white people in our history, and now how can a teacher who's teaching in the Oklahoma schools still feel comfortable teaching about this history because some parent is going to say that their white kids are feeling guilt or distress because they're being told about the horrible things that white people have done, and they should feel discomfort or stress. I mean, guilt or stress. So my question is why is this happening now? Why do you think that this has become a big issue now, that quote unquote critical race theory is something that people should feel shouldn't be taught in our schools? And why now? Why are the state legislatures deciding now to take this up?
I'm going to start with Lizzie because Robbie always gets mad at me for starting with him first on these race questions.
Patrick, I'm going to say because, over the past 4.5 years, these type of races were emboldened by the 21st century Führer, Donald Trump. He gave these people a voice and made them feel like, okay, you guys are victims. We as white people in America, we as white men in America, we're victims. We aren't as bad as everyone is portraying us out to be. We're not racist. We're not white supremacists. We aren't the KKK. We are good people. We are patriots. And how dare we support an education that teaches something that is opposed to that? I mean, even look at, over the week, I think over the past week, there was the retired Army lieutenant. I believe his name was, let me see, Barnard Kempter. He was the retired Army lieutenant who was giving a speech on Memorial Day. And he had his mic cut off when he started to talk about the influence of African Americans on Memorial Day.
Oh, really?
How African Americans played a part in the creation of Memorial Day. As soon as he got into and this was a white Army lieutenant, white retired Army lieutenant who's talking about African Americans and their influence in the creation of Memorial Day. And the organizers for the event cut off his mic. Oh. They cut off his mic.
They cut off his live mic, yeah.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. And so there's a belief that, only white history counts. Like we got away from that for a very small segment, Patrick. But then, Donald Trump came in and gave these people power, and he emboldened them and told them it's okay for you to be white and racist and not want to, commiserate and diversify and be a part of an America that is accepting to all people. So that's how we got to this place now. And all of these people, all of these governors and senators who are enacting these laws, they're friends of Trump. They're backers of Trump. They're supporters of Trump. It all
party over people.
Together. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, Rob. Party over people. Party over people.
All right. Robbie?
Yeah, it's made me think of a Family Guy bit where there's a couple of white guys talking, and they're like, "Hey, do you remember when we used to have all of the power instead of just most of the power?" And it's so there's a lot of state leaders and their constituents that are reminding me of that bit because it's ridiculous. If you keep people ignorant, you breed fear, you breed contempt. These are the tools of division. Education builds understanding of another culture's viewpoint and allows you to better empathize, to actually understand about what is going on with someone outside of your peer group, out of your upbringing. And it's so important because, well, the world is a small place now. It's every nation is a melting pot. There's someone from everywhere on the planet. It's really neat. So we need to share our stories. We need to talk about history. And like Patrick was saying earlier, feeling gross, feeling that shame about what other white people have done historically. If I feel gross learning about my history, it means that I'm probably learning the correct version of the history. Because it doesn't matter what population or what demographic you belong to. If you go back far enough, your people have done some heinous shit to other people in order to survive, to get by on that next one. So we need to share those stories in order to really understand one another and be able to move forward together as one human race.
Yeah. So here are my thoughts. So now I know that this is not exactly what STIT is doing, obviously, but I have a question for you guys. And I want to know, do you think it's easier, because he did say, so as Patrick said, he says that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. And so he doesn't want to teach that. And he doesn't want to teach the moral characters inherently determined by his or her race or sex. That's what they're not trying to teach. But the question I have for you, is it easier going forward by ignoring the past, but establishing from today, let's say today, and of course, STIT is not doing this, not saying that's what's happening, but is it easier to ignore the past, start from today, and say, hey, we are all created equal, right? And boom, we just continue believing that everyone is equal. Or is it better to continuously teach about racism, potentially creating like a new generation that kind of reiterates? Like, and let me explain why I'm asking the question, because I've been creating these TikToks on racism, racist songs and racism, and a lot of TikTokers are young people. So these young people watch my TikToks and they're like angry. They get angry, and they get angry at white people, right? They didn't know any of the stuff that I'm teaching them before. They had no idea, no concept of like that this happened, Tulsa, all these other things that I'm showing them. Yeah. They didn't know, and so they get angry at white people in the comments, and they get angry and they start saying things, and I'm like, okay, no, calm down. That's not what the purpose of what I'm doing here. My purpose is to educate. So I have a question: is it causing a problem by bringing it back up, resurfacing all of the pain and all of the issues? Is it more of a problem or is it good? And I just want to know for myself what you guys think, because I'm going to keep doing these TikToks and teaching people, so that's not going to stop. But I'm just curious what you think.
If you're holding up a mirror that makes me feel uncomfortable, then I really need to look within myself why I feel uncomfortable with what you're showing me.
But I'm saying it's black people that are upset with white people. Is what is happening.
Well, I mean, I'll go ahead.
Truth hurts. But regardless of who is angry or upset, the truth is the truth. You can't sugarcoat it anyway. And to get to your original point about equality does not mean we're all the same. Equality does not mean no diversity. One of the worst things someone can say to me is if they walk up to me and they think they're, saying something to me in good faith, but they say to me, I don't see color.
That's the stupidest thing to say.
It's much easier to, it's much easier to ignore race when you're coming from a place of racial privilege. It's much easier to not see when you come from a place of racial privilege, and to ignore that history, that when you come from a place where the history doesn't negatively impact you in the way that it does for Black people in the United States. So you ignore that. It puts that history puts a present in context, and unless we know that history and understand that history, we're not going to understand the present. We're not going to be able to know what to do now.
Exactly.
And the thing I feel is like we want to prevent it from happening again. That's the most important thing.
Right.
Those who ignore their history are doomed to repeat it. So if we're not talking about the residential schools, if we're not talking about the massacre at Tulsa, then these things will reoccur because those bad ideas will somehow live in the subconscious. So we need to talk about it.
But is it creating division, though, by talking about it?
I mean, we could create division talking about the NBA playoffs. Like, that's not the point. Again, history is history. Truth is truth. And a lot of times when you give people their history and where they came from, it gives them confidence. Because up until that point, they've been taught that they, like Native Americans, like Black people, like even Asians and Latino people in this country, Jews in this country, they've been taught that they were nothing. That it was just the Anglo-white people who had the foresight, who had the brains to create America. And so then when you start to go through the history books and you start to do some research, you're like, hold up, wait a minute, that's not the truth. I come from not only a wealthy people, but an innovative people, smart people that were engaging. That gives you confidence. And so
that created something like a Black Wall Street out of the ashes of slavery. I mean,
or created, blood plasma like Dr. Charles Drew. Like there are tons of things,
yes,
that we could all build upon if we look at our history. And I'm not just saying Black history. I'm saying white history, Asian, everyone's history. That should not be to the wayside because some people might get their feelings hurt. You know, those are
and people should be angry about the crappy things that have happened in the past. The fact that people are angry when they learn about that doesn't mean that we shouldn't teach it. It means we should figure out how to address it, how to restore it, how to find restorative justice, how to address the problems, the bad things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
And it also corrects a lot of ignorance about who we are in our history. I can't tell you the number of times over the past 2 years when I, was at Howard teaching, and you had students that were angry about Black History Month because it was in the month of February, the shortest month of the year, and the white man, they're always trying to cheat us out of something. And I'm just like, but the white man did not create Black History
Month.
Right? Look it up.
It's being industrious, getting the same amount of shit done with less days in the month.
If you don't know history, you're going to still be, creating that division and being angry over something that is a false narrative.
Okay. All right, we got to get to these comments because we are way over in time, so we're going to have to make my thing short. All right, we need Fred Groves. We need to talk about how to help solve it. He also says no accountability. We are angry because it's not acknowledged. No accountability has been taken. Daria Winter says the problem now is that people don't even know how to discuss race. Learn the strategies of teaching.
Yep, that's true.
Jacqueline Robinson says there are Jewish people who were alarmed at the beginning of the previous administration because they recognized certain things from the 1930s. We have to teach our full history so that certain atrocities aren't repeated. That seems to be the theme here. We don't want it to happen again.
There are people in this country who don't even know about the Japanese internment camps. They have no idea that happened after World War II.
And I don't remember ever learning about the Tulsa Massacre in school growing up.
There you go.
Oh, no, we didn't either.
Or Neil, how about this? We went to a high school named Woodrow Wilson High School. We were never taught
that Woodrow Wilson was a terrible racist.
Exactly. We were never taught that.
Oh, he was one of the worst. He was right after Andrew Jackson.
We were never taught that. So learn your history, folks. Learn it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have to move on, unfortunately. So great topic. It's a great topic, Mayor Patrick. We appreciate you.
Shenanigans.
Oh, you know what I'm forgetting to do? I'm forgetting to ask the panel at the end. Are we calling this Truth, Lies, or Shenanigans?
So someone's still in vacation mode.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, I've been on vacation. So we're calling that Truth, Lies, or Shenanigans. That was definitely
Truth, Lies, or Shenanigans.
I'd say Governor Stitch pulling some nasty shenanigans there.
Shenanigans, yep.
Yeah, shenanigans. Calling shenanigans on that.
All right, so I'm up next. All right, so Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida signed legislation on the first day of Pride Month, actually, that bans transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports. He said about doing it specifically on the first day of Pride Month, quote, I think standing up against discrimination of our women athletes, I think that's the right thing to do this month, next month, or any month. He said further, what we did with the girls' sports bill was we're standing up against discriminating against our women athletes because the fact of the matter is if you force them to participate against biological males, that's fundamentally unfair. That's not a level playing field. And we've talked about this before, and I think for the most part, our panel agreed it was not a level playing field to have transgender athletes participating in women's sports. But now that DeSantis put it into law and said what he said, what is everyone's thoughts today on transgender girls and women competing in women's sports? Also, what are your thoughts on DeSantis doing this specifically on the first day of Pride Month? I'm going to start with
That's bullshit. That's
that's
and I hate it. Actually,
that's a deliberate attack. Yeah, that's a deliberate attack, and that's just it demonstrates his character.
All right, I think we're all.
I'm refraining from throwing something at him right now on my computer screen.
Most people in this screen, Patrick. Snatch them through the screen.
All right. Well, let's stick with the other question. So, what do we think about transgender athletes in women's sports specifically? All right, Robbie?
So I have to agree that biologically, a biological male will, like I even did a little bit of homework on it just to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn. But whenever you monetize anything, we're talking about high school and college athletes. We're talking about scholarships and potential salaries that are up for grabs at that level of competition. So it's a bit of a slippery slope. So I'm going to say this. I'm all for promoting trans athletes. I'm all for fair and equal competition. I'm also for protecting athletic scholarships for biological women. So I honestly believe that the creation of a trans athletic league will be the way to go in order to preserve everybody's right to compete fairly. And this is becoming, it's coming to the forefront more and more. And it's an issue that we are grappling with, that people don't know how to deal with. And I think that just give everybody an even platform to compete in.
I'm going to go with Patrick next.
Okay, but we're talking about kids in the high school level. I mean, sure, there's a growing number of trans athletes in high school and college, yeah, but also in the high school. I mean, there's a growing number of trans athletes that are coming out, and that's great. Do you really think we're going to have a transgender athletic league? I just don't see it really necessarily being a feasible sort of thing. But like even as they're growing, what I think, I mean, this whole thing about trans women having a competitive advantage, there's no real evidence of that. I mean, the people who have been making that argument for a long time now have never really been able to cite any sort of, like, it's all anecdotal, this sense that, like, because they this idea that they were born male or whatever, even though it's much more complicated than that, when you're talking about transgender people, that they somehow have a benefit over women, cisgender female athletes. That it's based on anecdotal ideas, and I think a lot of it's based on the preconceptions and misconceptions that people have about transgender folks, and not based on science. So I think we need to take a step back from this and look at what is the way to make the playing field equal for everybody, including transgender athletes, and allow them the ability to play and compete in sports like any other teenager should be able to. I also will say that a lot of the leagues, the NCAA, a lot of local leagues have been allowing transgender people to compete on transgender women to play and girls to play in girls leagues for a long time, and only recently has this really become an issue. And a lot of it is because frankly, there are conservative politicians now that are trying to play the culture war game and make these things issues when they've been going on for a long time without anybody seriously making an issue out of it. So that's why I want to throw things at Governor DeSantis.
All right, Lizzie, let's go.
I want to throw things at Governor DeSantis, but I think for different reasons than Patrick. Getting to like actual competition portion of it, there's a reason why there's a division between male sports and female sports, male sports, men's sports, and women's sports. There's a reason why in most sports, the two don't compete together against one another. There are biological reasons for that. But listening to what both Patrick said and what Rob said, I think one of the main things that's missing here, when you have someone like Governor DeSantis or other politicians who are involved in this, and they're coming from a political standpoint, they're coming from a fake me out religious standpoint. But the first thing Rob said was, I did my research. No one is talking about research here. No one is talking, and when I say research, I don't mean like, Rob, we're able to do quick research, on Google, look, but no one is doing like exhaustive studies on this. and how to make this a better situation. And so, yeah, we talked about this a couple of times on the show. I have long since said that I don't know what my opinion is, one way or the other, because I am an advocate for LGBTQ community. I am an advocate for transgender athletes. However, I do understand the female athlete who is saying this shit isn't fair. So we have to get serious. You can't just make a law without understanding what the actual issue is.
That's what you're getting to, my
We
point.
need to do research, and research doesn't happen overnight. This isn't going to be something that's going to be, figured out by the time the Olympics start next month.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to take a minute.
You're getting to
And
my
I
point.
don't think any of these politicians are prepared to do that. And they are playing on people's religious fears, gender fears, all of that stuff. And that's what's complicating the issue.
Yeah.
That's what's complicating the issue.
Okay, so I did my research too, and I ran across this great article. It's called, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Hold on. Striking the balance between fairness and competition, the rights of sorry, can't talk for some reason. Striking the balance between fairness and competition and the rights of transgender athletes by Chris Supranant. All right, so considering that both are important, right? I think we all agree that both are important. He notes that the reason for women's sports was to create a level playing field for women to compete, because when they were competing against men, that they couldn't. So that's why women's sports was created. And he noted a proven fact that, and this is a quote from him, pound for pound, men are more athletic than women, which is why women's sports exist. And the whole point was, okay, I already said that. So now, for example, we wouldn't want to have children competing against adults. Why? Because there's this clear difference between skill levels. We wouldn't have children who are 2 playing, competing against children that are 15, because there's a clear difference between them. You could look at the weight classes in boxing, right? For example, there's different weight classes because you create a level playing field for each of the weight classes, because it's very hard for a small fighter to compete against a heavyweight. Or, we have the Paralympics, the Senior Olympics, the list goes on, right? Creating level playing fields for players to compete. So he says, and he actually pointed out that Serena Williams a while back had said, we can, me and Venus can take on any player in the top, not in the top 200 top players in the world. We can take any male on. And then she actually played them, and they got swamped by a number 203 ranked male player. And later she ended up saying that, in the women's circuit, those were all been winners, but he picked them up no problem. And that was like 1998 from what I'm seeing. Anyway, the whole point is he did. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's a good point. I don't think that's a point you want to put here, because we can go back to Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs, in which she actually beat Bobby Riggs.
Yep.
So we can throw that by the wayside. But I think what Serena was saying is that the average, even if you're talking about tennis, and just the average serve of a male athlete is way more than what the average serve of a female. Like, there is a physical advantage.
All right,
There's
so
a physical advantage there.
So this is the solution that he suggests, right? And let me try to. So he says, instead of excluding transgender women from competition, just like boxing, create another competition level instead of just men's and women's. And this is similar to what Rob was saying, but instead of making it transgender, make it an open division where men can compete in it, women can compete in it if they choose to, and of course transgender can compete in it. And that way you have a relatively level playing field for transgender athletes. And in addition to that, and it occurred to me that it actually helps, because I was looking at this particular image where there were 2 transgender women competing against, this was Connecticut, I believe, against...
Is this high school?
think this is high school, yep. And the two transgender men came in first and second, as expected. But what I realized looking at this is it forces the women to compete harder.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if you create something like an open division, it gives the women something like Serena and Venus. If there were an open division that they could compete in, that would be great for them to be able to compete in something like that and improve their own skills.
So then where is the incentive for the men to compete harder? Like, why is the onus put
Well,
on
no,
the
it's
woman?
it's
And
it's
if
it's
the
the opposite for men. They can compete down because maybe if you're not in the top 200, you want
that's what
to
I'm saying. But
compete
competing
on a
down
level
is
playing field.
not the same as competing harder. You're taking yourself
But
down a
that's where the
level.
balance comes in, though.
There is no balance. If I have to work harder to compete against you, and you're just running in. Okay, I didn't do anything over the weekend. I'm good. That's not fair at all. At all. Like the woman shouldn't have to compete harder.
I'm not saying they
If
should have to. That's what I'm saying. There should be an open division where they can choose to.
but the scenario that you're setting up is not to the advantage of the biological woman. If she has to go be above and
She doesn't
beyond,
have to. You keep saying have to. She doesn't have to. She would
why wouldn't
choose
she?
to.
She wants to win. Why wouldn't she if she wants to win?
She can
Why wouldn't
choose to
she?
compete against women if she chooses to, or choose to compete in the open division. She has
But
that choice.
the
It's not a
language you
have
said
to.
it would give the language you said it would give them the opportunity to compete harder. Compete harder for what? If they're still competing against a biological male, chances are they're not going to win.
They can win. You just gave a great example with Billie Jean King. And this girl did not lose by a lot.
Tennis,
Hold on. The girl in
tennis
this
is
did not
way
lose
too
by a lot.
old.
She
That's
could have
tennis.
competed.
Way too old. We are talking about two athletes that are going to be high school, that are going to be in college, that are going to be professionals. And the Billie Jean King thing, that was an exhibition. That
Sure.
wasn't a real competition.
Sure. And he wasn't a good player anyway, let's be honest. So,
I do think this raises some interesting questions about because especially when you look at the high school level, like what is the point of competition, and you're really trying to get people to strive to be their best. There's the idea of just focusing segregating people off from gender and then having them compete against each other. I mean, shouldn't they? Maybe I'm being a little bit Pollyannish with this, but shouldn't we be mostly just encouraging folks to strive what is to be their best at their own achievement level, regardless of what that is?
sure.
Of course, Patrick. But the problem is, even at the high school level, then there are scouts, there are college scholars, there are college scouts and scholarships that are being bandied about. So as soon as you monetize it, it becomes problematic because you have to find that balance, that equation to create a fair and equal playing level so that everyone has equal opportunity to those opportunities. Because, I mean, whenever you monetize something, there's scruples come into play, and not everyone is ethical, and some people are happy to make bad decisions to make a quick buck.
And
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that too.
everyone's coming from a different point of reference. Like you have even high school students, unfortunately, who know that they have to compete and compete well to get their family out of their situation. And so if you change the circumstances of the competition where they are at a disadvantage, they might not get that scholarship.
Yeah.
They might not be able to compete and play or get on the team at the college level and then advance to the Olympics or
They
what have
mentioned some suggestions about like doing a handicap as well, where you would take into account the difference in testosterone levels and things like that, and then you would give them like some handicap, some calculation that has been. This particular guy, Christopher, he
I don't
he
think
didn't like
that
the idea, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
didn't
think
like the
that
idea
works.
either. But I mean that was something that someone had suggested, and he's like, that doesn't make any
I
damn
mean,
sense.
it's again like Patrick said, and both Patrick and Robbie said, like these politicians are not even having the conversation that we're
That's my
having.
problem.
Right.
That's my problem. You don't just legislate something like this
Yeah.
without coming up with a viable solution that works for both people, both sides of the situation. You don't just legislate something like that. You wouldn't do that, Patrick.
Right. Can I just do a little bit of a timeout and point out one thing that because I heard people make the comment, because this is going to bother me if I don't say it.
Okay.
I heard people make the comment about calling somebody a biological woman as opposed to a transgender woman. Transgender women are biological women too. The bright term is transgender women and cisgender women. There's a lot that we don't understand about biology. And what the way that a person's mind works, the way that causes somebody to be a transgender woman, that person is just as much a biological woman as a person who's a cisgender woman. So I just wanted to do that little syntax correction.
No, and cis is a term that unfortunately gets dropped quite a bit. So no, thank you for the refresher. Thank you.
No, Lizzie, I know you want to say something.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I would respect the terminology. As a biological woman who, has a menstrual cycle, as a biological woman who, had a myomectomy, had to have fibroids removed, like, I don't necessarily agree with that. However, I would respect the terminology. If that's what I am supposed to say, because I don't want to be offensive to anyone, and I want to be respectful of how the next person feels. But in my head, there is a difference in biology, and that's not taking away from a transgender woman at all. But there are differences, and that's fine. To me, that's fine. And I often wonder, because I've seen the word, I believe it's spelled, Patrick, is it CYS?
Cisgender, CIS gender.
So I remember the first time I saw that, I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I was like, oh, goodness. I don't even know if I want to say it until someone tells me how I'm supposed to pronounce it. I have no problem saying that. Whether I agree with it, I might have to do my research.
This might end up being our longest show. We have to move on, unfortunately. We really do.
This is our longest show.
It's not.
Actually, no, I think we had a 2-hour show. We did have a full 2-hour show. We have had.
We are not done the game show yet. We're
going to get to the game. Trust me, the game show will go very quickly.
Before you came on, Robbie, that was when we had East and Jam. Woo!
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right. So that is it for Hot Topic. Donna Jones says, I think a league won't make sense because you also have transgender men born biologically female. That will be a disadvantage. That would be at a disadvantage against transgender women. It's so much to consider and to work out. Olivia says, create their own league, call it a day, make it simple. Derek Winter says, so too transgender. What?
I was just saying, I'm agreeing with them and saying this is why we can't just throw out laws.
Right. Because that I have a huge problem with that. So 2 transgender men to compete against 2 transgender women, unclear explanation. Okay, so that's it. That's it for our hot topics. Thank you for participating, Mayor Patrick.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
Man, that was deep. That was
well,
deep.
that's
All right.
what happens. You
good.
take a week off, you come back with heavy.
We did have a lot to talk about. It was a lot to talk about.
You're ready to dive back into the deep conversation after last week, huh?
We bring on the mayor. No, we gotta come hard.
All right, let's run into our game show. We're gonna make this a quick game show. Today's game, Pride Month trivia from BuzzFeed. All right, real simple. We'll go around the horn. I'll read off the questions, multiple choice options. You'll answer. If you answer it right, you get a point. Person with the most points gets the coveted final thought of the show. All right, so this was an example. We're definitely not going to allow anyone to take this one. What does the L in LGBTQ stand for? Any guesses?
Love.
That would be
love.
Love.
Lesbian.
Lesbian, the acronym, which was evolved has become more inclusive over time, was popularized in the 80s. Okay, we are going to start with Mayor Patrick. In the U.S., what month is Pride Month typically celebrated? Would that be June, July,
You gotta
or
give me a
August?
harder question than this. You gotta give me a harder question
All
than
right,
this.
all right,
Come
we'll go to
on.
the next one. We'll go to the next one.
No.
All right, we'll go to the next
June, of course.
one. What country holds the record for the world's largest Pride Parade? Would that be the USA, the Netherlands, or Brazil?
Wait, is this still to me or
This is you, yes.
Sorry.
Mayor Patrick.
I'm gonna go with Brazil. USA seems too obvious.
Brazil. And that is correct. Correct. Brazil broke the Guinness Book of World Records largest parade in 2009 with a whopping 4 million attendees. All right, Robbie Rock. Wow. What year did the first Pride marches occur? Would that be 1969, 1970, or 1971?
69 seems like the fun answer, but we put someone on the moon then.
69, fun answer.
Oh, shit. I'm 71.
71, let's see. That is incorrect. 1970, the Christopher Street Liberation Day March was held in New York a year after the Stonewall riots. Similar marches were also held in Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. All right, true or false, Lizzie? The Stonewall Inn was New York's only gay bar in 1969. True or false?
That's problematic. The only known gay bar?
It says the Stone was only gay bar in 1969.
I'm going to say true.
Really? That is false. I don't know how you came up with true. I was thinking false all the way. All right. So the Stonewall Inn wasn't the only gay bar in New York City at the time. Bars like Starlight Lounge, Mayfair Bar and Grill were also popular with the LGBTQ.
But see, this is why we need to do history. We need to learn history, people.
All right. This is the last round. So Mayor Patrick, you are up. And you're in the lead. So that's good. You got to get this right. If you get this right, you win. All right. Which important gay rights event happened after the Stonewall riots? Was that the National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights, the Sip-In at Julius's, or the Cooper Donuts riot?
The sit-in at
I'm going to go with
it.
I'd love to know what these other things are, but I'm going to go with the National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights.
Let's see. That is correct. The National March on Washington, Lesbian, and Gay Rights. The first Washington March for LGBTQ rights took place in 1979. It's estimated that 200,000 people marched with the aim of accomplishing 5 key goals, many of which remain unmet. So that
I believe it was 1993 that the National March on Washington happened. It's not saying it there, but I think it was 93.
93. Okay, great.
All right.
Well, I'm glad you know.
Look that up.
Well,
I'll have to look that
thank
up.
you for that. You are the winner of today's game show. I wish we had time for more questions, but good job.
I would have won with more questions.
Good job. All right. So we made it through. We made it through pretty quickly. We're not too far off. All right, before we close out, we do need to get in some shout outs. So let's get some shout outs. All right, Mayor Patrick, shout outs. We're starting with you.
Let's see. I'll do a shout out to my friend Philip, who I believe is still tuned in after an hour and a half. So,
all right, Philip. All right, Robbie Rock.
I would like to give a shout out to my niece Isla, celebrating her 7th birthday this week, and we got to see her, which was absolutely amazing. It's just crazy to watch these little ones grow up so fast. It's amazing.
Man. They grow fast.
Yeah.
Lizzie?
Shout out to Gemini birthday. So, first weekend in June. Yesterday was my late brother Alexander's birthday. Today is my friend Dee Dee's birthday. And tomorrow is Prince Rogers Nelson's birthday. Woo!
Prince Roger Nelson.
Nice.
Somebody's a
all right.
Prince lover. If Fred Hargrove was still on here, he would be happy because he loves Crimson Prince. All right. My shout outs to my wife Mel again. She's my favorite travel companion. We had so much fun in Turks and Caicos. Beautiful back here, all right? Looking forward to our next trip, my lovely wife. And since it's been 2 weeks, Olivia has selected 2 winners for our Pet Shenanigans of the Week. So let's start out with, first up is the cutest little Peking duckling sent in by Kelly Corelli Joyce.
Oh, I love the Mario Mushroom 1-up. That is so neat. I didn't notice that before.
So cute. You gotta go on the Pet Shenanigans page and check out the video. They are so cute. So Pet Shenanigans. All right. And second up, we have Pucky. This is Pucky. She's a beautiful black cat belonging to Erica Jenkins Bertrand.
I mean, Pucky's cute, but Pucky looks like Remy. Like, I feel like that's Remy.
I know.
In the grass. Hi, Pucky.
All right. To see all of our beautiful pets or post your favorite pet's photo, make sure you join our TLS Pet Shenanigans Facebook group. The photo with the most likes and comments gets the TLS shout out each week. And okay, that is officially all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We hope that maybe you learned something, gained a new perspective, or even got some things off your chest. Don't forget, like, follow, and subscribe, and share. Tomorrow, check out YouTube for our YouTube clips, TLSshow.com. And our next TLS Live Show is on Sunday, April 13th, 4 p.m. Eastern.
April? We going back to April?
I did it again. June 13th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. We have a fantastic guest TV reporter, Jamie Perez, will be here. And don't forget, this Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Gianni Storm, Olivia E. going unscripted once again. And our winner of the game show and our final thought of the day is Mayor Patrick. Mayor Patrick, please close us out.
Involve that boa.
Sure. So, well, this is it's Pride Month, of course, and it's a little bit of a strange Pride Month. A lot of Pride celebrations aren't happening, but I hope everybody finds a way to celebrate who they are in their own way and the best way that they can over the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pride celebration in College Park?
No, there isn't a Pride celebration, unfortunately, and a lot of the Pride events in the DC Metro were canceled, actually postponed until October. So I think there's going to be some. We may be doing something then. The students are all gone for the summer now too. So, but hopefully we'll be able to celebrate in true Pride fashion in a few months.
We'll be looking forward to it.
And don't forget, if you want to help support Mayor Patrick, go to patrickforcollegepark.com. Thank you, Mayor Patrick. Rob, Lizzie, our people behind the scenes, Jose, Olivia, and most importantly, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Love it.
Truth, lies, shenanigans. 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 Truth, lies, shenanigans.